We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Wednesday. We're midway through the week. And as you can see, I'm back in the familiar confines of my home in Minnesota. A little more comfortable here. I've got all my equipment, I've got the lights, I've got the room. I know exactly what I'm doing. I've got privacy. Everything's working in my favor here. That's not to say I don't like going on the trips. Going to Georgia is one of my favorite things. There is a building I can do the podcast from, so that works out. Yesterday was a little more problematic. We were in Daytona Beach, and I was in a standard hotel room, and with my wife and my son there, that wasn't very um, convenient for doing the podcast. So I had to go into the lobby, and there's a loft in that lobby. I will tell you, this was a Quality Inn across the street from the Daytona International Speedway. Very nice place. If you're in that area and you're looking for a hotel, that's the spot to be. I mean, it's nothing crazy fancy, but it is nice and clean and affordable. Unless, of course, you go there during race week. I talked to the lady behind the counter. I said, "What's the cost to rent this place when the Daytona 500 is going on?" And she told me that the room I was in would have been $500, and that was far more than I was paying last night. $500, and you had to commit to 5 days. So if you want to stay across the street from Daytona International Speedway during race week, it's going to cost you a minimum of $2,500 just for the room. Not that big a race fan. I probably won't be down there that time of year, but any other time, I'd be happy to go back. Daytona Beach seemed like a very nice town, in spite of the fact that it's in Florida. I have my issues with Florida. Ron DeSantis, the Republican legislature. It's not someplace I want to go to spend my money, given what the government is doing with people's money down there and what they're doing to people directly. People say, well, why were you down there? Well, you have to understand. My wife works for an airline and we get free flights basically. Normally, during most of the year, we would fly from Minneapolis directly to Savannah. But during a few months in the winter months, her airline doesn't fly directly to Savannah. So we have to figure out another way. Sometimes for a period of time, we can fly to Jacksonville and then drive 2 hours back to Savannah. But there's a couple of months where the only option is Orlando. So we fly to Orlando and then drive up to Savannah. That kind of sucks because it's about 4 hours and you're driving on Highway 4 and 95, both very busy, a lot of trucks. It's not the funnest part of the trip, but that's how badly we want to go to Georgia and how much we enjoy going to Georgia. So that's why I was in Florida. I wasn't really vacationing there. I was in transit either to Savannah or back from Savannah to the Orlando airport to get where I'm sitting right now. Want to give you a heads up. I just talked to her yesterday. Old Soul will be on the show tomorrow. Looking forward to that. I'm sure she has some interesting insights as to what's going on these days. We know that yesterday there were oral arguments. Donald Trump and his legal team went to an appellate court in Washington, D.C., and was trying to convince um, three justices that he has absolute immunity, that he can do anything he wants because he is a former president. It didn't sound like the justices were convinced, and we'll talk more about that a little later in the show. But Donald Trump did not have a good day yesterday. Things didn't go to his liking. And if you looked at him while he was in the courtroom, there were some pictures and some descriptions. Yeah, he was not happy, partially because he wasn't allowed to talk at all. And that's all Donald Trump does. So the fact that he was shut up and had to sit and listen and get taken to the woodshed, well, that wasn't a fun day for Donald Trump. All right. We have some emails. Always love the emails. I will say this, though, on this first email, kind of annoyed me a little bit. And Max, I may have to take you to the woodshed here. And I hope you take it in the spirit it's given. Um, Again, I'm a little annoyed by it just by the nature of how this email was written. I'm not angry. I'm not mad. I'm just annoyed by it. So let's read it and see what Max has to say. He says, Mike, I'm writing to express my sadness and disappointment that you chose not to assist all American citizens with a complete discussion of Project 2025. I'd emailed to you a 20-minute video and its link detailing the very dangerous project proposed by over 50 conservative groups headed up by the Heritage Foundation to abandon the U.S. Constitution, eliminate over 75,000 federal employees and their positions, to make for a new federal workforce, to assure that only conservative policies are put in place in the future to replace the executive branch of the U.S. government. I realize proposal has a small chance of succeeding. However, with enough money spent by the richest people in the world, anything can happen, and it's not worth the risk to ignore it. I strongly believe the best way to assure its failure is that as many people as possible need to be aware of this plan. And a very good method for doing this is to have public discussions and as many people as possible see the 20-minute video, as it is concise and very powerful. I do realize that you may not want to advertise other creators. However, from what I've heard from you in the past, you want to do anything possible to save our democracy. Please reconsider and watch the video, conduct a discussion, and share the link. Thank you, Max. All right. First of all, Max, do not send me an email and try to shame me into doing something you want me to do, because I have no shame and I feel no pressure in bending to what anybody else wants me to do. All right. I don't like the tone you took there. And, I'm not mad at you about it. But when you do that, that immediately says to me, with the kind of mindset I have, is fuck that. I'm definitely not doing it now. Second thing, Max, do you think the first time I ever heard of 2025 was when you sent me that link, a 20-minute video? You called it a concise video. Do you understand how the people in this country think? They think in 2-minute or 3-minute or 5-minute bits. To get somebody to sit down and watch 20-minute video is a lot to ask. And people just won't fucking do it. They're just not going to do it. Secondly, and as far as advertising other creators, I have no problem with that. I'm not in competition with any other creators. I'll put them all on here. But funny thing is, most other creators don't talk to me. So I don't have a problem with promoting other creators if they have something that interests me. I get a lot of tips from other creators. I don't take what they say, but I will get an idea for a story and then I'll dig it out myself. Now, what you're describing here with Project 2025, it's been well promoted. A lot of people know about it. And apparently, Max, you weren't listening, but we have talked about it to a certain extent here. You say that we should have everybody talk about it so it will never happen, but you also say it has a small chance of ever happening. Max, you've also heard me talk about what the media does and how much disdain I have for what they do in constantly trying to scare people by telling them bullshit. Now, I understand Project 2025 is a terrifying concept. It was written by some Trumplafucks. Okay, if it ever happened, it would be terrible. I'll grant you that. But here's the problem. The only way that Project 2025 is going to happen if the Republicans get full power in the House and in the Senate and in the Oval Office. And that is not going to happen in 2024. It's just not going to happen. And then you'll probably say, well, down the road in 28 or 20 or 32, then when they get power, then they'll bring Project 2025. I disagree. Project 2025 is this fascist authoritarianism bullshit that we're hearing about right now. This is, excuse me, this is what they think is going to win an election for them. But they are not going to win in 2024. Not the presidency, not the House, not the Senate. So, what do you think is going to happen to Project 2025 when the people who support it and the people who espouse this? What do you think is going to happen to Project 2025 when 2024 they get their ass beat? And in 2028, you're going to have far more younger people voting, so they're going to get their ass kicked again at some point between 24 and 28. This is what the Republicans must do, or they will die on the vine. The Republicans will have to change direction. Project 2025 isn't something that they're trying to get it down the road. They're using it now to try to get enough people behind it so they can win in 2024. When they lose in 2024, they're going to abandon Donald Trump. They're going to abandon this whole fascist thing because it doesn't work. Plus, you're getting more young people voting. 2025 is a terrifying document. But who was it written by? It was written by Trumplafucks. I've read the document and I think it's all completely bullshit. And if you buy into that sort of thing, it is terrifying. But I don't think Project 2025 will ever see the light of day. And for me to come on here and read it and watch the 20-minute video, all I'm doing is what the media does and what I complain about, trying to scare people. This is not the time we should be scared. This is the time we should be bold and brave and just knock the fuck out of these people. So you may not like the idea that I'm not spending 2 shows talking about this, but I'll tell you another thing. When I came and started doing this podcast, I did it very specifically. In a podcast form because I got tired of people with suits behind me telling me what I can talk about and what I can't talk about and how I needed to talk about them. At this point, you should know me well enough. If someone's trying to shame me or force me to do something, I ain't going to do it because I don't fucking have to. If I thought this were a serious threat to this country, I would talk about it. I have talked about it. I think the whole concept, I think the document is horrific. Anybody who reads it or hears parts of it would say the same thing. But to sit here and pound on it is not helpful. It's like the people who sit out there, oh my God, what happens if Donald Trump wins? We're going to be fat. Fuck that. It's not going to happen. And this isn't pie in the sky hopes and dreams that I'm offering here. This is based on facts. Please tell me how Donald Trump wins or any Republican wins when they support overturning Roe v. Wade, when it takes away constitutional rights away from 50% of the country and pisses off 75% of the country. Please tell me how you win an election when you've done that. And that's not including the other bullshit. We saw what happened in 2022. To think something else is going to happen in 2024 is just foolish. Yeah, it's scary. There's a lot of things that Donald Trump says and does that the Republicans say and do is scary. You know what's scary? Is taking away those abortion rights from women and putting women at risk of getting sick and dying and children dying. That is draconian. That is horrible. That is something that's affecting people today. You're talking about what the Republicans' hopes and dreams are. But they don't even have those hopes and dreams. They're just trying to throw out anything to get attention and get support. This is not going to get support. Anybody who's listening to my show doesn't need to hear this. And I'll tell you why, because nobody listening to my show is ever going to vote for Donald Trump or a fucking Republican. So why do I need to rehash that and maybe scare people? You have to understand, Max, every day I get people coming to my page or sending me emails. They are fucking terrified. They are not sleeping at night because of all this shit they hear in the media. Most of it is bullshit. We've got to deal with the things at hand. We've got a lot of problems now. Once we deal with those and we get closer to maybe a Republican president or something, then maybe we should talk about the Project 2025 thing. But it's 2024, and we've got an election to work on to make sure stuff like Project 2025 doesn't happen. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but don't come here and tell me what to talk about or how I should talk about it or how I should spend 20 minutes watching the video. I don't care about the video. I know what the document says. I've read the document. It's all bullshit and it's scary to some people. It's not scary to me because it's not going to fucking happen. So, and I want to say something too. When I say that I don't listen to what people have to say, that's not totally true. If somebody comes to me with a legitimate suggestion, I'll listen to it. If it makes sense, I will fucking do it every time. Case in point, if you watch my TikToks, do you notice that I have the date on every one of my TikToks? Now, that's not the most aesthetic thing. It's just an extra step that I have to do, but I do it because a listener or a viewer came to me and said that would be very helpful. And I realized when I'm watching videos, it would be helpful if some of these other fucks would do it too. So I said, that's a good idea. I'm going to do that. And I do every time. Max, you need to worry about the big problems we have now. Don't go looking a year, 2 years, 10 years down the road. We know what fascists and authoritarians will do. It's not going to be good. We don't have to read it and scare people. What we got to do is focus on stopping those fucks as opposed to scaring more people than they're already scared people. I'm not here to scare people. I'm here to give them confidence and I'm here to give them hope and I'm here to stir them up to fight back. If we fight back, if we do what we're supposed to do, Project 2025 isn't a fucking thing. So I'm not going to watch the 20-minute video because I'm not going to waste 20 minutes of my time hearing about Trumplafucks. I know everything I need to know about Trumplafucks. I don't like them and they need to be eradicated. All right. Thanks for the email, Max. Don't mean to get all riled up, but you have to understand where I'm coming from. Please don't shame me into doing something. I'll tell you what, I get a lot of comments every day on TikTok, and it's impossible for me to address every comment I have, literally thousands. Every week I get thousands, and I can't address, I try to address as many as I can. Now, I'm fortunate with the podcast that it's a smaller amount of people watching. And every time somebody sends me an email, I will read the email, whether I agree with it or not. But I spend most of my day watching the news, trying to deal with the things that are happening now or in the near future and trying to get that information out. I don't think it does anybody any good to worry about what might be if Republicans win and all that shit happens because it's not going to happen. I'm not worried about Project 2025 and I'm tired of people trying to scare other people with it. All right, the next email. Hey, Boomer, Javier. Wow, sounds like even the DC circuit is skeptical or scared of the orange cesspool. I really thought they were going to put the hammer down and then see if the Supreme Court would take it. I'm even more surprised. Didn't really think anything else would. Thoughts? Okay, Javier, you're putting the horse before the cart here. You heard the arguments, and I don't know if you heard all the arguments, but I heard a lot of it. And Donald Trump and his legal team were absolutely embarrassed. Every time they said something they were countered by the Supreme Court, or not the Supreme Court, the appellate court justices. It went very well for the prosecution. It went poorly for Donald Trump. I, I'm wondering, Javier, did you think they'd come down with a decision that day? That's not going to happen. It's going to be about 3, 4, 5 days max, probably. And they'll come back and they'll turn Donald Trump down, and then it will go to the Supreme Court. This is a trial, it's not a debate. The justices were pretty much went after the lawyers, but it's not going to be like what you think, where the judges are going to tear them apart. One of them, Justice Pan, kind of did put one of the lawyers in his place, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But that's not what it was going to be. They were going to hear the arguments, and now the justices will go back and make a decision. And I guarantee you, when they come back, Donald Trump's team did not make their case. They look stupid, and the appellate court will say, no, you don't have immunity. Guaranteed. All right. Next one comes from Ron. It's a shorty. Mike, I appreciate the candor and the honesty. Keep up the good work, Ron. Oh, you like the candor. How you like it today? Thank you, Ron. I appreciate it. All right. The next one says, hello, Mike, over the road, Russell here, coming to you from the road tonight in Boonville, Missouri. Just wanted comment on one aspect of Donnie Dipshit's case that was heard today by the appeals court. The argument that in order for a president to be prosecuted on any charge, he would first need to be impeached by the House and convicted by the Senate is, of course, absurd. This would obviously be used as a political cudgel by the rival parties, depending on the makeup of the two houses of Congress at any particular time. Also, crimes such as attempting to overturn an election would happen at the end of a presidential term, therefore leaving little time for a proper investigation and impeachment. I'm sure Mr. Dipshit considered this before making the decision to go forward with the big lie. Well, someone told him to consider it. He wouldn't be smart enough to think of it himself. Yeah, I'd have to agree. I'm sure he was shocked that Ms. Pelosi was able to get the House to impeach him so quickly. These courts must hold him accountable if we are to see fair elections going forward. Anyway, keep up your good work and give them hell over the road, Russell. Yeah. The fact of the matter is Donald Trump has a problem. If Donald Trump is found immune by this court, and he will not be, but if he was found immune by this court, this would mean that Joe Biden literally could have SEAL Team 6 kill Donald Trump and not be tried for it. I don't think Donald Trump had thought about that. Now, that's not something Joe Biden would do, but it's nice to dream about. All right, the next one. Hi, Mike. Hope you got back safe from Georgia. I did. Here I am. I was talking today with several co-workers. I was doing my best to explain everything involving Trump's Colorado case and the 14th Amendment. I could tell I put their minds at ease a bit. Most of the concerns they had centered around Trump getting written in as a candidate, or him somehow magically winning in November but being ruled ineligible after. Glenn Kirshner was talking about it, about how if the Supreme Court rules against Donnie and keeps him off the ballot, that if he continues to campaign or try to get his dipshit followers to write him in, it could be fraud. He also said if he keeps grifting to campaign for a race he's ineligible to win, that could also be mail or wire fraud. I honestly think Donnie is too stupid and too far gone mentally to understand that there is no difference in being removed from the ballot and not being eligible to be president. I know his base isn't smart enough to understand. I anticipate that if he is removed from the ballot nationally, that he and his supporters will launch a write-in campaign, though them staying home would be better. Well, they can put a write-in campaign, and it would serve the same purpose as them staying home. Because if you read the 14th Amendment in the third section, it isn't that nobody can vote for him, it's that he can't hold office. So even if he won by a landslide, he could still not take office according to the Constitution. So let those dumb Trumplafucks um, vote away. They want to vote for Donald Trump. God bless them. He goes on to say, I saw on TikTok today that Alabama Senator Katie Britt introduced a bill to prevent undocumented immigrants from voting in federal elections. I know it is all for show, as that is already a law. Either these Republican lawmakers are that fucking stupid, or they understand their voters are. Most Republicans will be cheering this bill, even though it already has and was illegal. This is just like how they keep saying the federally taxed money shouldn't go to abortion care, and yet has been that has been banned since the 70s. Lastly, I did some research about gun laws in Iowa. In 21, Kim Reynolds eased restrictions on gun purchases. She made permitless open carry legal. In 23, the Republican controlled legislature was trying to pass a law allowing people with permits to conceal carry to keep guns in their personal vehicles on school grounds. She called the Perry shooting a tragedy, ordered the flags at half staff, and said Iowa stands with the community. It is being reported that a possible motive was being tired of getting bullied, and apparently his younger sister was starting to get bullied as well. I bet Kim Reynolds doesn't back any gun reform laws, school reform involving bullying, or really do anything to good give good sound bites. Thanks, Eric. Well, thank you, Eric. Eric's been on the show a number of times, and of course, he lives in Iowa, so he has a different or an interesting perspective on what's going on in Iowa. And Donald Trump, of course, gave a speech in Iowa, and you remember that he said, well, it's a terrible tragedy, but we got to get over it, days after this thing happens. That's the kind of person Donald Trump is. Yeah, that's a terrible thing, but let's talk more about me. Fucking Donald Trump and Kim Reynolds. Not a fan of Donald Trump's apparently, but still, Donald Trump is running away with the polling in the Iowa caucus, which is coming up in what, 5, 6 days, something like that. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I just I expect Donald Trump to win it because Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis are just such weak fucking candidates. Now in New Hampshire, it's a little different situation. Nikki Haley is creeping up on Donald Trump, and Donald Trump could conceivably lose that one. It'll be interesting to see how he responds if, in fact, he does lose in New Hampshire. No doubt he's going to claim it's a fake election, it's a fraud, it's election interference, or whatever the fuck he wants to say. All right, the next email comes from James. I listened to about 10 minutes of oral arguments presented by Trump's legal counsel, and it was totally ridiculous. He's talking about the arguments for absolute immunity for Donald Trump. Maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing if the court agrees with him and grant the immunity. This probably could be the only way to rid the country of this evil man. Based on his arguments, President Biden could order Secret Service to assassinate him, and he would be within his presidential rights and not be charged with murder. Be careful what you wish for, Donnie boy. James. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's how silly this whole argument is. Of course, that's not going to happen. He's not going to get immunity. Joe Biden would never have Donald Trump killed. But it just illustrates how silly this whole fucking thing is and how there is literally no chance that he's going to get that immunity. All right, the next one, next email says, Hey, Boomer, I think I screwed the company I work for today listening to the Trump appeal for a good hour. No worries, I'm on salary, but it was so delusional. In fact, he is free to go because he was the president. His attorney, that sounds like he gargles with battery acid, he kept going on to, I believe, Madison and 47th Federalist something. Yeah, that was a weird thing. I heard the recordings of his lawyer. What's it, Sauer? Um, Sauer, he kind of sounds like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. There's something wrong with his vocal cords. Sounds really weird. The interesting thing about this Sauer guy, he's the one trying to suggest that Donald Trump has complete immunity and he could have his political opponent killed unless he was impeached and convicted by the Senate. Fucking absolutely ridiculous. The interesting thing is that this guy, Sauer, clerked under a famed federal judge, Michael Ludig. You see him on TV all the time. He's the one that says Donald Trump doesn't have immunity and he's going to jail. I'm guessing Michael Ludig isn't exactly impressed with his former clerk because he's going the absolute opposite way. He's going the wrong way. He's going against the Constitution. Apparently, working under Judge Ludig, he didn't learn jack shit. Email goes on to say they used to shit in outhouses back then. We found a better way. This fucker cannot play both sides of the fence. His attorney should be disbarred for his defense. When asked what if a president orders his political rival to be murdered by SEAL Team 6, yes or no, he could not answer that. I think I could smell the shit running down his leg along with Mr. Shit Dirty Diaper Donnie himself. What an incredible waste of time this self-centered asshole can cause because people think he's rich and powerful. He is neither. Wheels of justice move slowly, but he is going to get chewed up. Love the podcast and the TikToks and all the listeners. Safe travels, Darren. Darren's been on the show too. Thank you, Darren. And you're absolutely right. It was a weird situation yesterday in that appeals court, and we're going to talk about it next up, we'll talk about it. We'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. All right, we talked about this during the emails, but let's get to the details of the story. A three-judge panel for the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals appeared unanimous in rejecting former President Donald Trump's argument that the presidents have absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for any acts taken in office unless they are impeached and convicted following arguments on Tuesday. It's a weird strategy. They're saying that in order for the judicial system to take action against a president, somehow Congress has to say it's okay for them to do that. That's absolute bullshit. That's not true. That's not in the Constitution, and the judges or the justices pointed that out. The appeals court sat in judgment over Trump's appeal to dismiss the 4 felony charges brought against him by special counsel Jack Smith for his actions on January 6th. The court largely addressed Trump's 2 main arguments. Presidents have absolute immunity from all criminal prosecution for official acts taken in office, and presidents may only ever be prosecuted if first impeached in the House and convicted in the Senate. No president has been impeached and convicted. The appeals panel consisted of 2 Biden appointees, Judge Florence Pan, an American Asian woman. There was, hold on a second here. There was Florence Pan, Michelle Fields, and one George H.W. Bush appointee, Judge Karen Henderson. Now, again, Florence Pan is an Asian American. Michelle Fields is an African American. And Karen Henderson is a white woman, and she's a couple of years older than Donald Trump. This had to be a terrifying moment for Donald Trump when he sat down. The reports are that he went into the courtroom, kind of plopped down, him in his dirty diaper, at the defense table, pointed his eyes downward, and didn't say a single thing during the trial. Not because he probably didn't want to, but because he wasn't allowed to. And the funny thing is, can you imagine trying to keep Donald Trump's mouth shut? Well, apparently he was nervous enough about the potential punishment for him flapping his gums, so he kept his mouth shut. It's interesting that Donald Trump even showed up, and people are trying to wonder why he showed up, especially if he wasn't going to be talking. And I think I know the answer to that. I think the answer is that he was putting pressure on his lawyers. Donald Trump likes to tell his lawyers what they need to say. And most of what he tells them to say is absolutely ridiculous. It's embarrassing. And if Donald Trump wasn't there, they could kind of couch the issues or make some other claims. But with Donald Trump sitting in the courtroom, they had to say exactly what Donald Trump had to say. And apparently, they feel more pressure from Donald Trump than the legal system, and more worried about Donald Trump and what he might say as opposed to their own careers. Now, all three of the judges appeared skeptical of the arguments made by Trump's defense lawyer, John Sauer. But the true absurdity of Trump's argument quickly became clear as Justice Pan, forced Sauer to take the former president's argument to its logical conclusion. This is what she said. Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival and is not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution? Pan asked Sauer. Sauer offered a qualified yes if he's impeached and convicted first. But as Pan pointed out, if the president were not convicted in the Senate, then Sauer's answer is no. She further stated that his logic also applied to a president selling pardons or military secrets, as these could be argued to be official acts. Now, this extraordinarily frightening future where it would not be a crime if a president orders the assassination of his political rivals and then resigns to avoid impeachment and conviction should weigh heavily on the court's decision. And you know what they're going to do. I've never been so sure of anything in my life. He's not getting immunity. The appellate court will say, fuck yourself, Donnie. You don't have immunity. It will then go to the Supreme Court, and they will do the same. I'd be willing to bet my children on them. Of course, my children are 36 and 30, and if you want to take over the load there, you're welcome to it. My wife might have something to say about it, but anyway. Pan also pressed Sauer on the contradiction inherent in the two arguments Trump makes for immunity. If a president can be prosecuted if they are impeached and convicted, then the president does not have absolute immunity, she argued. Therefore, the court should only seek to answer whether the Constitution mandates impeachment and conviction to enable a later prosecution. Sauer rejected this contradiction by arguing that the requirement of impeachment and conviction for an ex-president's prosecution is a very narrow exception. So narrow, in fact, in my mind, it doesn't fucking exist. Henderson, meanwhile, questioned Sauer's argument that the president can freely break the law because he is being required by the Constitution to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. He said, I think it's paradoxical to say that Trump's constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed allows him to violate laws, Henderson said. In making the argument against Trump's absolute immunity defense, Pierce noted that common public perception and practice since the Watergate scandal has been that former presidents can be subject to criminal prosecution. Former President Richard Nixon's acceptance of a pardon for his actions, including directing the CIA to interfere in the FBI investigation, is strong evidence that former presidents have believed that they can be criminally prosecuted, even absent impeachment and conviction, Pierce argued. Now, throughout the arguments, Sauer Claus clashed with the judges, repeatedly refusing to answer clearly stated questions. In particular, he refused to concede that his prosecution could be in any way legitimate, even if the facts fit the argument he was making. It appeared at times that his arguments were aimed less at convincing the judges than at showing strength to his client, who was in attendance. Like I said, he was there. Donald Trump was there to make sure the lawyers said exactly what he wanted them to say. And what he wanted them to say was absolutely fucking ignorant. And this will cost him the case. To be honest, the way this lawyer answered these questions, he pretty much conceded this case. Judge Pan and the other judges um, were skeptical about this. There is no way they're going to give Donald Trump immunity. Now, the Department of Justice has asked the court to issue a ruling within 5 days of arguments. Trump's lawyers have reserved the right to appeal any decision to the full appeals court or to the Supreme Court, which they will do for no other reason than to buy time. But all they're doing is delaying the inevitable. Donald Trump is not going to win this one. He's using this immunity defense on most of his cases, if not all of his cases. And once the Supreme Court finds that he is not immune, then he's fucked because there's no other place to go. He's going to have to come up with a better strategy, and they ain't not. There ain't no better strategy. That's why I'm so amazed when people always say, oh, what if he wins? What if he wins? He's not going to win. There's no way he can win. I mean, Jesus Christ, all the evidence is against him, and he's got no evidence to fight with. How is he going to win? It's like the election thing. How do you win an election when you've taken away constitutional rights from all women and pissed off 75% of the country? If you don't look at anything else, you can't win. This is logic talking. This isn't some emotion or hope and dream that I have. I'm taking a look at the facts. And it is what it is. And this whole immunity thing, anybody out there worried about it, stop it right now. He's not getting immunity from anybody, including the Supreme Court. All right, we've had this whole story about Jeffrey Epstein's list coming out. Turns out it's not really a list, it's a bunch of documents. They keep releasing more and more. There are names in the documents, but it's not really a list. However, there is some more damaging things coming out on these documents. A Jeffrey Epstein accuser is speaking out about past claims she made that the late pedophile kept video footage of his various friends having sex at his home, saying it's absolutely true and that she only recanted her story years ago out of fear following threats. So we've heard that story before. It's no secret that everything was recorded. Sarah Ransom, who settled a civil lawsuit with Epstein and his madam, Ghislaine Maxwell, in 2018. She was on Good Morning America yesterday. Multiple victims have come forward confirming my account along with others. I've also seen recordings in his office. These recordings supposedly show former President Donald Trump, former President Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, and British business magnate Richard Branson having sex with an unnamed woman, Ransom claimed in 2016 emails that were published Monday as part of a defamation lawsuit brought by fellow Epstein accuser Virginia Giuffre. Now, the newly released court documents also include photos of Ransom Maxwell, Epstein, and other young women on Epstein's private Caribbean island. Ransom said she recanted the tape's existence years ago because Maxwell, amongst others, regularly enforced that if I ever did come forward, myself and my family would be harmed. Ransom first came forward with her allegations to a New York Post reporter in 2016. She said the woman who allegedly had sex with the men had personally recalled her experiences with Ransom, particularly the woman's one on one time with Donald Trump, according to the court documents. She confided in me about her casual friendship with Donald. Ransom wrote of the woman in one email to the Post reporter, Mr. Trump definitely seemed to have a thing for her, and she told me how he kept going on about how she smelled like, about how he liked her pert nipples. Wow. She added, I also know she had sexual relations with Trump at Jeffrey's New York mansion on regular occasions. Well, isn't this interesting? No Joe Biden in these documents, no Hunter Biden in these documents. But they'll say, oh, yeah, what about Bill Clinton? I don't give a fuck about Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton hasn't been president for decades, and he is a private citizen. If he did some shit, put the cuffs on him and throw him in fucking jail too. I don't care. Now, Ransom retracted these claims to the Post reporter shortly after saying, going public would bring only bad things and pain to my family. The story was not published. Remember, we've talked about this before. There's the situation where the lawsuit, where Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were co-defendants. And the lawsuit was about both of these two creeps raping a 13-year-old girl. I've seen the documentation. It's easy to find. Just go on Google and Google Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein lawsuit document, and you'll see the PDF of it. It was there. And then that woman recanted it, no doubt because she was threatened with her life. We know what's happening to judges now who have the audacity to go to trial with regards to Donald Trump. So this is not at all surprising. Now, in 2019, Ransom told The New Yorker that she entirely invented the video claims. She said she wanted to draw attention to Epstein's crimes and make him believe that she had evidence that would come out if he went after her, according to her interview at the time. No such tapes have been made public, nor has evidence supporting their existence. Ransom told Good Morning Britain on Monday that she'd be willing to testify about their existence. Well, the question is, do they still exist? We know a lot of people, a lot of powerful people are under the gun with Jeffrey Epstein. And if there are videos, I would have to believe the wealthy, the powerful have tried to find some way to destroy those tapes. That's what I would think. Now, whether they did or not, we don't know. But if they didn't destroy the tapes, why haven't they been released, or why haven't they been brought into evidence? Well, some Trumplefucks will say, well, they never existed. Well, we know they existed because when they went through Jeffrey's island and Jeffrey's home in New York, there were cameras fucking everywhere. And there were recorders everywhere. The idea that he didn't record any of this stuff is absolutely ridiculous. The fact that we know that Jeffrey Epstein blackmailed a lot of people, that would suggest there are some videotapes. The real question is, why haven't we seen the tapes? Or why haven't the DOJ seen the tapes? Or if they have seen the tapes, why don't we know about it? Some shit's going to blow up after all these documents are released and people go over it and digest it and ask questions. There's going to be a lot of hard questions out there. And yes, Donald Trump was involved. You Trump-lefucks that say Donald Trump wasn't there, but Joe Biden was, you're fucking wrong. You're stupid. And nice try, but you're wrong. It's not at all surprising that Donald Trump was involved, given his proclivity for sexually assaulting women his admiration for his daughter when she was underage. That was weird. Donald Trump is known for this kind of behavior. 26 women have said that he assaulted them. So the idea that he's buddies with Jeffrey Epstein, who supplied all these young girls, and that Donald Trump was his buddy, there's all kinds of pictures that show it. It's absolutely ridiculous to argue that Donald Trump was not there. And Donald Trump should ultimately pay a price for it, but I'm not sure they will. There's enough people with enough money and enough power to try to shut things down. I know this because this has been going on for 10, 12, 15 years. And what's come of it? The only thing that's come of it is that Jeffrey Epstein was put in jail and he ended up dying in jail, we think. But Jeffrey Epstein isn't the only one that was committing these crimes. Why has nobody else other than Ghislaine Maxwell been indicted? That seems troubling to me. That tells me there's some covering up going on. And I'm hoping that some of these journalists, these reporters, will be able to dig up some evidence so we can once and for all implicate the people who were a party to what Jeffrey Epstein was doing, were friends of Jeffrey Epstein, and were just as guilty as Jeffrey Epstein, whether it's Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, any of these fucks. It doesn't matter who it is. And I don't care if they're Democrats or Republicans. All right. Special counsel Jack Smith notified, this is interesting, notified U.S. District Court Judge Aileen Cannon that former President Donald Trump and his co-defendants, Walt Nada and Carlos de Oliveira, have yet to produce any discovery materials. Well, that's interesting. This has been going on for about a year. Jack Smith has provided all his discovery and all his evidence. Donald Trump has been ranting how he is perfectly innocent with these classified documents, yet somehow they provided no evidence. Sounds reminiscent of Jim Jordan or James Comer or Mike Lindell or any of these other dumb fucks. They claim they have all kinds of evidence, but somehow they can't produce it. Now, in a 3-page filing on Tuesday, Smith noted that the special counsel's office had fulfilled its obligations to turn over information about classified documents case against Donald Trump. It says, in accordance with the court's order of November 10th, 2023, the United States of America files this discovery report. Smith wrote, the order contemplates a joint discovery report being filed, but as the defendants have yet to produce any discovery, the government has prepared this report. So they're putting in their report and their evidence, not a fucking thing from Donald Trump. Smith said the prosecution made 8 productions of unclassified discovery, while Trump made none. Counsel for Trump and his co-defendants did not dispute the claim. The former president was indicted last year on 37 counts of mishandling classified documents. Now, the real question is what is Judge Aileen Cannon going to do about it? Is she going to do anything? Or is she still going to lean toward Donald Trump and give him all kinds of space to continue to delay? I'm guessing this may be one of the traps that Jack Smith is placing for Aileen Cannon. This is something she has to address. This is something she has to enforce. If she does not, you can bet it's going to the 11th Circuit, and Judge Aileen Cannon's going to have a problem. People are in a hurry to see Jack Smith do something to get Aileen Cannon kicked off the case. And I'm convinced he's going to do that, but he's biding his time and he's trying to pick out the right time to do it. I think this may be the beginning of his plan to do away with Judge Aileen Cannon. So Judge Aileen Cannon better act properly and promptly in this case, or she's in for some serious problems. Now, here's an interesting story. Once again, Donald Trump is flapping his gums. We don't know if he's serious or not. But former President Donald Trump aims to deliver his own closing arguments Thursday in his New York civil business fraud trial, in addition to his legal team's summations, according to two people familiar with the highly unusual plan. So they're giving the closing arguments tomorrow, Thursday, the 11th. And then that would be it. Once that closing argument is done, then Judge Engoron would have the opportunity to make a decision as to how much Donald Trump will have to pay and whether or not he will lose the opportunity of running a business in New York. Remember, the whole question of whether Donald Trump committed massive business fraud, that's already been decided by Judge Engoron. He is certainly guilty of that. But Donald Trump wants to give the closing arguments. I say, Godspeed, let him do it. But I don't know that he can, you know. You can either represent yourself or have a lawyer represent you. And theoretically, you can't have both. But it sounds like the judge is going to be okay with it because he probably going to find the shit show rather entertaining. Now, there's one legal analyst, I think it was Kirshner on TV, that said it's a very slippery slope if he decides to do that. Because if he decides to give the closing arguments, then the prosecution would have the opportunity to cross examine him, meaning he would have to go under oath on the stand, be cross examined by Fonnie Willis's team. I have a feeling he's not going to want to do that. And this may be just like everything else he's ever told us. Oh, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to testify. But when it comes down to it, he's either talked out of it or he was talking out of his ass and bails because he's a pussy ass bitch. I suspect he will not give the closing arguments, but goddamn it, I hope he does. I hope he does because he will fuck himself over like he does every time. Now, Trump is a defendant in the case brought by the New York Attorney General Letitia James. She claims his net worth was inflated by billions of dollars on financial statements that helped him secure business loans and insurance. An attorney for Trump informed Judge Arthur Engoron earlier this week that the former president wished to speak during the closing arguments, and the judge approved the plan, according to one of the two people who spoke to the Associated Press. So theoretically, he's on track to speak. The judge is cool with it. I think it's because the judge knows if he does do it, he's just going to fuck himself over. So why not give him enough rope to hang himself? Now, both persons who confirmed the plan did so on condition of anonymity because they weren't authorized to disclose the information to the reporters. The Trump campaign and a spokesman for James declined to comment. So we have to wait 24 hours or less to see if Donnie's going to step up and give closing arguments. I'm sure he thinks he's an absolute genius and that he's going to wrap this up and win it for himself. But you and I know better. You and I know he's going to fuck this shit up. And I'm here for it, as Muscles and Nursing would say. All right, the last story. A judge late Saturday said former President Donald Trump's lawyers can't present legal arguments to a jury assessing damages at a defamation trial on jury's conclusions last year that he didn't rape a columnist in the mid-90s. Now, you remember in the first E. Jean Carroll case, they found that he sexually assaulted E. Jean Carroll, but they would not say he raped her because they could not definitively answer how she was penetrated. Seems ridiculous. Rape is rape, but they wanted to use that to say, well, at least I didn't rape her. Yeah, nice try, Donnie. you're going to lose another fucking case and you're going to whine about that too. U.S. District Judge Lewis A. Kaplan made the determination in an order in advance of a January 16th trial to determine defamation damages against Trump after a jury concluded Trump sexually abused columnist E. Jean Carroll, but did not find that he raped her. Now, Trump was speaking in Iowa on Saturday as the Republican front-running presidential candidate in advance of a January 15th primary, criticized the judges as radical Democrat and mocked E. Jean Carroll for not screaming when she was attacked. It was all made up, he said. So you see what he did there. He defamed her again, so he's going to get another lawsuit. This motherfucker can't learn a goddamn thing. Carol 80 won a $5 million award last May from a jury that concluded Trump sexually abused her in 1996 in a luxury department store dressing room and then defamed her in 2022. And then right after he lost that case, he defamed her again. And now that he's going into another case, he defamed her again. If I was a lawyer, I would quit immediately. This guy cannot be controlled. He's out of control most of the time. And every time he does, he guarantees he's going to be implicated and the lawyer's going to lose the fucking case. Every time. Every damn time. So Donald Trump, see, you have to understand how things are going here. Donald Trump's going to have a busy couple of weeks. Now, remember, today is January 10th, right? Now, they're going to do the closing arguments. Donald Trump's team is, and maybe Donald Trump will talk on the 11th, which is tomorrow. They've asked that the judge come down with a final decision within 5 days. That puts it at January 16th. January 15th is the start of the Iowa caucus. January 16th is also the start of his E. Jean Carroll case. This is going to be a rough week or two for Donald Trump because he's going to be doing nothing but losing. Well, he might win the caucus, but who really gives a fuck? But as far as court cases, he's in some deep trouble. And it's starting in January, and henceforth, he's going to spend a lot of time in court, and he's going to spend a lot of time fucking losing. Because that's all Donald Trump does, is lose. This is why I'm amazed when people come crying and saying, oh, Donald Trump's going to win in 2024. Really, based on what? He won one race in 2016, and from what we know now, he probably cheated. Ever since then, him, his ideology, his supporters have lost race after race after race. And nothing has happened between 2020 and 2024 upcoming with the election that made it better for Donald Trump. Everything that's happened has made it worse for Donald Trump. How in the world do you think he's going to win in 2024? And I hold by what I said before. I don't even think he'll be the nominee because of one reason or another. I can't tell you what that reason will be, but you can't take a guy who's that age in that condition, put this much pressure on his head, and think he's going to be able to put together a campaign, come up with the money, and actually win the nomination. Please tell me how that's going to fucking happen. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking time to listen. And for those of you folks that think I was too rough on Max, I wasn't trying to be rough on Max. I'm trying to make a point that I've made all along ever since I started doing TikToks. I'm going to say what I think is right based on logic and common sense. If it doesn't fit with logic and common sense, I'm not going to say it. And nobody's going to tell me what to say. See, that's the problem with the media these days. There's always somebody with some agenda telling the talking heads like me what they should say, what they can't say, or what they better say. I got nobody telling me that, and I will have nobody telling me that now or in the future. If nothing else, whether you like what I say or not, know that it's coming straight from this head, this heart, and it's what I believe to be true. And if you don't like it, that's cool. If you want to call me out on it, that's cool too. But if you call me out on it, we're going to have a discussion. And I tend to be blunt. And if that's too much, well, then don't do it. Don't listen. But if you're okay with it, then keep listening. And I appreciate the fact that you do. All right. We're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. Again, I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.